Duncan Smart. It's great to see you.
It's good to see you too.
Um, I just wanted to, the reason why I wanted to go live on Instagram, especially because last time we had such a great conversation, and we had a great talk before we did any recording or anything. So I was like, this time we're not doing that. We're gonna get it all. And so basically, I've started a new conversation channel on YouTube, and I wanted to have interesting conversations with interesting people and sort of touch into things from a wider spectrum, not just simply about diet and carnivore. And our conversation, man, I couldn't think of a better person to get a hold of and have a talk with about all things, in our lives. And, you being such a great, interesting character with your story about how you've done such great things at your age. And from being an author, I mean, I could argue you're getting younger because if you're following Duncan on any social media, you'll see that he's done some pretty remarkable things. And so the books, the bike, the how you're doing, I want to get into all of it and maybe even touch on some spiritual stuff. So, how are you?
Very good. In regards to health, absolutely fine. As you rightly say, I feel as though I'm getting younger. I'm certainly getting fitter and healthier. So I'm actually putting on some weight this time of year, but I normally do because it's a block training of strength over winter before the racing season starts. So over 20 pounds of weight gain and muscle this winter, but it's exciting. It's good.
Well, you're looking good.
Well, thank you. I came back from Poland. I've been in Poland a couple of weeks ago, and I got my teeth polished, and they kept saying, "This said you got really good teeth for a 57-year-old," and I said, "Yes, because it's the way I eat. It's the way I live."
No doubt, man. So I want to start with your bike. Did you build a bike? Did you
Yes.
actually?
What I might have touched on before, I've been a maths teacher for a long time, and I love mathematics. I'm passionate about the subject. I think you'll see it on everything behind. It's similar to you. It's these patterns in nature that attracts me. But prior to becoming a maths teacher, I worked in engineering, fluid dynamics. I did a lot of work in power stations, in nuclear power stations.
Wow.
And even worked for Formula One race teams. It was because it was anywhere that they were conveying fluids, whether it was hydraulics or whatever, then they would call in a specialist. Nowadays, it's all done by computer and it's a lot easier, but you would take all the mathematical side of it. So I race, and I race on my bikes, and the season starts next week. And the carbon fiber race bikes can start at 20,000 plus because they are so, and every year I've got friends who say, "Oh, I've got the latest model," but I'm thinking, well, last year's model wasn't much slower, and some of these bike frames might be 10 years old, but because the geometry on them, the design, it's still beautiful, and they were fast. They were breaking records then. So if I come across a frame that's looking sad and so it's been discarded, I will build it. But the beautiful thing about building it is I can rebuild it to every detail that I want, every part that goes onto it. And then the electronic gear shifting, it's a challenge. It's like those old puzzles we had as children, trying to put the electric into it. And because it's an old frame, I'll drill holes. I'll take the angle grinder to it and I will file bits off. And when people say, "Well, isn't that dangerous?" I say, well, on a push bike on the road at 30 miles an hour, it's compared to a nuclear power station, which I'll have been wearing a nuclear suit. I'd have been the last person, and they couldn't send anybody else to inspect that work. Nobody else is going to ever see it again. And the consequences of failure would have been a small little island like England going up like Chernobyl. So no, I'm not too concerned about fitting a few brake parts. It's because bikes are quite agricultural. But the difference is this year, I thought, why don't I change the brand and put Carnivore on there?
Yes, I saw that too.
Yeah, and I've got it on my helmet as well, Tony. So I'm on so many race photographs and they splash it all over. Well, why not? I mean, I see many races where they wear vegan runner or vegan cyclist. Well, why can't I shout out? And as I'm overtaking them, it's like, bye. I feel a Carnivore, and of course it promotes a bit of the book as well, than the
Yeah.
Carnivore. But yeah, so I enjoy it. I think I enjoy the build of the bike more than I do the racing nowadays. I think
Nice.
it's a winter challenge, and that first ride on it is something very special. So yeah, I do
Yeah, and
enjoy that.
you did. I saw a couple little posts about a test ride.
Yes,
How does that?
yes.
So how does that go? How do you go about that? Like, you just get on it and try. I mean, obviously you're in a level of, all these fine details probably matter more than, the average guy watching these cycle races knows. So
Yeah, and of course you can go into it with the computers, and of course when I get into the racing, I'll be analyzing my data. But to start with, it's just by feel. You get on it and you ride it, and you think if it's going to be okay. And Anna, my partner, she was saying, she said, "Do you get excited about going on it first test?" And I said, "Not really, because I know that there's going to be lots of changes. I mean, there's almost a finite amount of tweaks."
yeah,
So where I live, on this beautiful east coast in England, in an area called Scarborough, and I live on a hillside, and the other side of the hill is something called Oliver's Mount, and it's where the Vikings all came. They all came and established there, because it's high ground, but there's very few traffic. It's a nice loop, and I can take the bike up there and I can test it. I can set up the camera and film myself going past, and yeah, okay, those pictures go onto social media, and people say I'm a poser taking these videos and pictures, but it's to give me some feedback of
for
how
sure.
I'm looking. Yeah, and that's what
Yeah.
it's about. So I got on this and I did a lap and I did another lap. I didn't have anywhere to put the cycling computer, so I couldn't see anything, but I knew it was in my back pocket collecting this data. And I thought, okay, mental note, I can't get the top gear. Yeah, I'm spinning out. It's called spinning out when you haven't changed up enough. I thought, it doesn't matter, I can tweak that when I get back. No, I was going faster than I've ever been before,
Wow.
because I was in top gear, but
Yeah.
because the effort felt easy. So what we tend to do, and there is a word for it, and we'll think about it, but it's where you almost give yourself an excuse for doing so well. So I said that, okay, I must have had the wind behind me, because to go that fast. And then I look at the data and I'm smashing all the records up there. I'm thinking that was just on a test. That I didn't even have my race suit on. And I'm thinking, and then I looked at the forecast, and you can get all the data for the wind direction, the air pressures, and the wind was in front of me. So I'm thinking, I can't even make up an excuse for that. So I'm very excited about the first race of the season.
Excellent.
Whether it's these extra 20 pounds of muscle mass that I've put on, and as we know with many of these things, it's be many factors. It won't just be one. Yes, the bike is definitely fits me beautifully. I don't need to tweak anything. It was surprising. Also, the strength that I've gained over the winter. Another year into Carnivore, fueling this way. It's my 8th years now. So
Wow.
it's just all coming together. And as you said when you introduced me at the start, saying about getting younger, so maybe I'm getting younger and faster. We'll see on that. But
So many variables.
so many variables, and many a time over the years, I wish and I said to you last time when I spoke to you, I'd kept a diary, I'd kept a journal. It would have been a book in itself with that, my journey and what I was doing each month, what I was trying, because I was trying everything, but secretly, quietly, because I didn't want to worry my children, for one, that they would have deemed me to be eating unhealthily, and many other reasons. So I just kept it secret, really.
Well, and I think we've all felt a little bit of that when you change something so, in the layman, something so radical, something so crazy. And I went through that too, where I'm like, is this real? Like, am I feeling this stuff? Is this it? And still to this day, I go through that, okay, let's lay it all on the table. Is this the right thing to do? Is this, and I've been eating this way probably about, I'd say close to 6 years. In a month, it'll be 6 years. And still those thoughts are like, am I still like, what is this for real? Like, it's pretty interesting. So I can understand that. But I did the same thing, man. I didn't document anything. And I tell people, I'm like, when you do these things, man, just I'm not a diary guy, I'm not a journal guy, but I wish I was for this, because it's so profound. And
Yes, that journey would have been. I'd have probably had 100,000 viewers on social media if I'd put that journey of mine up there. You know, even down to that experiment when I woke up one morning, I thought, right, let's try a fast, let's run a marathon and see how well I do. And it was incredible. I hadn't eaten for 24 hours.
Yeah.
And just set off and ran 28 miles, an ultra marathon. And I was getting quicker and quicker and quicker. This is with no fluids either, on a hot, sunny day in the summer. So incredible, really.
Yeah, it's those, you know, and even like when people are getting blood tests and blood work, and I mean, I'm not a doctor. I've said this a lot of times. I'm not a scientist, but what are we getting? What are you getting compared to? And that's that's the levels, right? Like we're going into uncharted territory, and you know, the longer people like yourself and you know the veterans, if you will, have been doing this, the more it seems like it's something like, you know,
Yes,
maybe
yes.
not for everybody these miraculous things, but it's definitely such a different.
Well, we my partner and I were just been over to Poland for 10 days, and she's Polish, is Anna, and whenever we go over, we go and get blood work taken, go to and get it done privately. And there's a couple of reasons I like to do that. For one, it's competitive for private
Mhm.
blood work, but also it keeps it off my records in the UK. So
Okay.
if not particularly any reason, I haven't been to a doctor for 10 years, but I just always think, what happens in the future if
Mhm.
what I needed to get some private medical insurance or whatever, and if they saw on the system that I had these cholesterol levels that they consider ridiculously high,
Yeah.
and they're not looking at everything else, I just think I don't want them to make these decisions. Or
True.
I just, you know, yes, I could say, I mean, plenty of people ask me and they say, oh, what do I say to my doctor who's trying to put me on statins? I say, it's very simple. And they say, what's that? I say, you say, I want a new doctor. And can you recommend a good one that will understand my blood work and understand me? I
Yeah.
said, that's all you say. Or
Yeah.
don't go to your doctor unless it's, but yeah, controversial, but
Well,
this
you
is,
know, and that's a thing. Like when I talk to my clients, family, friends about their blood work, and I see so many blood tests, and the one kind of takeaway is the same kind of framework. I'm like, this is a timestamp. It's a moment in time that if you're gathering data and you're getting information, one marker out of whack tells a story. It doesn't mean pill me now. It doesn't mean give me a
yes,
medication. You know, like why is this happening? Why is this like? And quite often, like with people that get a blood test done regularly. For one, the doctors don't issue any inflammatory markers. They don't issue insulin. So you're kind of looking at, you know, white blood cells, red blood cells, and then your basic lipids, and it's always falls down to that bloody cholesterol. Like
oh, yes,
you know,
absolutely.
I can think of like, you know, 17 different categories that would give you more like a clear information of your metabolic state than the bloody cholesterol. And it seems like they just take it right out of context, and that's what happens. You know,
And
it's unbelievable.
and everything else there, my kidney functions, my liver functions, and it's saying that of a 20-year-old. Again, it's like you said before, compared to what, but they've got to have some sort of idea. Great, okay, you're fine. You're saying that everything's functioning that of a 20-year-old, and I'm a 50, almost 58-year-old man.
But you're gonna die
But
tomorrow.
but but then my cholesterol's through the roof. You know, okay, well, I feel good. You know, my
Yeah.
heart rate's really good,
Yeah.
and I'm full of energy, so
And I
I'm
mean,
happy.
and that's something that you know, if it scares you, like when I see people, and you kind of get like two different kinds of folks. You have the people that just die by the sword and the markers, and then you have the people that are curious and they go, why? And once you start to dig in and do your due diligence about what cholesterol is, it becomes clear that okay, there's something here where, you know, you can go the conspiracy route about fraudulent science.
Yes,
You can go
yeah.
the actual what is cholesterol. When you start to realize that they're not even testing it, they're
No.
testing the particle, you start to go what? And you know, and that's where, you know, a lot of people like, it
And
seems like, who the hell are you to know this when my doctor is telling me that? And it's like,
and I think I told you this story last time. I mean, 10 years ago, when I was looking to try to find some way of fueling endurance racing. And I was so fed up with that carbohydrate gels that
Yeah.
I even heard somebody in the gym saying it today about their doing, he's trying to run a distance half marathon and he was getting digestive problems. And you see them running to the toilet and not even making the toilet on these runs because they're just having, and they're training themselves to absorb as many carbohydrates as possible. And this is what put me on this journey.
Yeah.
And I think because I am research minded and this over the top mathematician that looks at the data and also doesn't look at the data he's presented with, actually sees the holes in the data that's being presented and thinks, well, what is missing and what we're not being told about. Yeah. And that's what put me onto this. So I very, very quietly, secretly set off on this journey, fueling low carbohydrates, keeping them under 50 grams, just to see what would happen, but not wanting to tell anybody. And then one of my good friends, who was a really good runner, and he took me to the side and he says, look, I'm worried about you, Dunk, because if you start eating this way and you're going to do damage to yourself, to your heart, there's no going back. And I said, right, I'm going to go for the longevity award, and all my calculations, I think I'll be one of the last men standing. So let's just see. And one of my good marathon friends, he died of stage 4 lung cancer. And I was training with him a year ago, and he was saying to me about this very, very same thing. And it's before his diagnosis. And I joked with him saying, I'm going to be the last man standing. And it got me a little bit, did that. But we don't know. Nobody knows where that comes from, but how it happened to him. But
like what you're saying, when you're coming from the math, and people, like, in my opinion, I think people are mathing the wrong math. They're mathing the wrong math. Yes, we're not. Like you're counting calories, and you should be counting nutrients. Like you're, like what's bringing what to the table, and how your body's responding to it should be mattering more. And I don't. Obviously, we've been programmed, and like we'll probably get into this because I think it was a nefarious agenda, if you will, that. Because it doesn't make sense to me. Where I kind of woke up to this was, how could we be so wrong? How could we be so wrong about nutrition and how the body works? And once you start opening up that, going down that rabbit hole, I have learned more from engineers and math people that are logical than I have from any medical expert. And it's okay. The Dave Feldmans, the Ivor Cummins, yourself, like logical people that put it all on the table and they just do what they feel is right. And
I'm pleased to hear that, Tony, because when I first wrote this book, I almost hid behind the idea of being the author. I think I told you before, very first time I met you, I hid behind the vampirism behind it, because I thought, well, people won't believe what I'm trying to say because I'm just a maths teacher here in the UK. What qualifies me to be able to start talking about this? But all I'm doing is collecting evidence and quoting that evidence. And because of that scientific mind, I'm going to ensure that it is supported. It is every piece of evidence is there. But also then put it across as a hypothesis, as saying, well, if we got this bit of evidence and this bit of evidence, and we've got a correlation going on here, it speaks for itself, doesn't it, really? So.
And I mean, and I've kind of been going down a little bit more of the spiritual side of this stuff, where it's like, what is anything? And, if you look at just from science, I believe real true science would be understanding nature.
Yes.
The quest for it. So you take all these scientific experiments and like, what are they trying to accomplish? They're trying to prove a hypothesis. Yeah, but what are we trying to do? We're trying to figure it out naturally. And, it can get really kind of crazy. I mean, just looking at the balance of life, balance of nature. I mean, I think we are so far removed from alignment, whatever you feel it is. I think the people that are coming back into this, like, I don't know about you, but my brain starts working. And I didn't know that my brain could work because I was living my life in this fog that I had no idea it was until I kind of woke up.
And that's what I describe it as in my book. I describe it as waking up Once you, and I think I used the old Matrix film, the analogy with the red pill and the blue pill. Once you start to go down this rabbit hole, you there's no going back. I mean, I smiled at them when you were talking, because I'm the same. I go to bed sometimes and my brain's wired with ideas. I have to slow it down in a meditation and just get it to slow down before that on that evening, because I've got so many ideas I want to get out there. And it fueled on these ketones in my brain, and so alert and so wired. It's beautiful. It's a lovely way to be. I listen to so many audiobooks.
Me too, man.
And because I discovered I could train all the time and listen to them whenever I'm driving anywhere. I'm listening to audiobooks. I don't even turn on my television unless there's a particular YouTube channel or something I want to watch. And it's all in. I've got a sauna in my house. I sauna every day, and I live their life, but I listen to my audiobooks in there.
I mean, and that's what I found, like this useful time, when I'm at work, when I'm doing things, when I'm, just driving, especially. I'm actually now, like, I used to commute quite a bit, like, an hour plus every day to work. Now I don't, and I wish I did, because I'd have more time to listen to, some amazing people talking about amazing things. And it seems like, I just always want to be absorbing.
I'm a big believer in synchronicities, and it's actually more being aware of the synchronicities and opening your mind to watching these signs. So I always think a book finds me rather than I find the book. And also, you might be listening to it or reading or whatever the media you're using, and the author will mention another book. I think, right? That's the next one on the list, and it becomes a journey. I was talking to somebody the other day, because one of my favorite books is The Reluctant Messiah, The Illusions by Richard Bach. Have you read that? 1970s. Well, he wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull, which is one of the best sellers, did Richard Bach. But Illusions is a Reluctant Messiah, and it's a beautiful book. And I was traveling around the world for a couple of years, and this woman I'd met and mentioned this book to her, and she goes, "Oh, that'd be a great book." We're sat there at the station. I look down, beside me is the book. Is the very, very book we're talking about. So then I read it for the rest of the journey, and I've still got that one tattered. And when I met Anna, my partner, a year and a half ago, and I told her about this story, she goes, "Well, do you have that book?" I said, "Well, I will have it in one of the boxes somewhere." Next thing, my phone pings, and she sent me the PDF. She says, "Will you read it to me?" I said, "Of course I will." So then I started to read this book, and now we've both become authors a year later. So it's
wow.
It's an incredible journey. And these books find me, I think.
Well, I want to, let's get into a little bit about the books. And, obviously, if anybody's from our past knows our past conversations anywhere, they'll know that you're an author. But since we've talked, you've released another book. So
yes, right. I just want everybody to be aware. So the original was this manifesto. It was a huge book, and I mean physically huge, which is Blood and Bone, The Vampire's Guide to Carnivore Living. And the very first book I sold, and the guy put it on social media, and he says, "I've got some reading from a holiday," and he had his case. Well, of course, this book is so big, it took up half his suitcase, and I felt, oh no, I've got to produce a smaller version of it, and this manual. So I repackaged it under Carnivore, the manual. It's still the same book, so please, if you have one, don't go and buy the other, because it's the same book. It's just a more compact version. It'll fit in his case better. So there's not many changes, and I've been very clear about that. So it's not trying to, and it was really just rebranding it, because I think even when I spoke to you, and I had so many messages from people saying, "This book, is it fictional?" And I thought, no, it's so far removed from fiction. It's so scientific. And I remember attacking a lot of the doctors and really going for it, but hiding behind this theme of this vampire. So I could see where this came from. So the repackaging of Carnivore, the manual, was not to try to make any more money out of it, although the sales are very nice, thank you very much. It's more the fact is, if I'm trying to get this very important message out and people believe it's hidden behind fiction, then I'm almost, you can see where I'm going. So it doesn't matter what package it's coming along, the message is still the same. So when I was talking to Anna about that, she goes, "Oh, that's crazy doing two." I said, "It doesn't matter, it's fine, I can do this." And then 6 months later, I think we're in Portugal, And I said, I'm missing out something else here. And she goes, what? I said, I'm going to do a third version. She goes, you can't. I said, yes, I can, because I'm only directing these books at carnivores.
Yeah.
And yeah, now the people I want are the ones who are thinking about it or thinking about. And then actually, there's so many chapters in this book isn't directly about this way of eating. It's everything else that comes along that we've noticed.
Yeah.
And so there's a chapter, and we've got a chapter on cancer in there, and there's the chapter GLP-1s, and I've called it the hollowing woman, because that's what it's doing. Even menopause. I've got a chapter about menopause in there. So
no, go ahead. Sorry.
So it's not just. So what I'm saying is not just this way of eating carnivore, a diet book. So then I repackaged again, completely rewrote it around ancestral living. So there's no vampire. It's all about the ancestral living. And really, it fits that theme so much better, because I talk about cold exposure and everything else that we know, the grounding that comes along with this way of living. Because as we said right at the start, it's opened our eyes. You open your eyes because you become aware of your surroundings. You become aware of nature more. And because your body becomes so finely tuned, you actually realize the benefits from that cold water dip, or the benefits from that sauna, or the benefits of walking barefoot. You feel so much better, because you're not hiding behind all this inflammation and everything else that comes along. And I stand out there, and I love a sunrise. You'll see it on my social media. We get up early, we go to this, because we live on the East Coast, so we get the most splendid sunrises. And I am worshipping that sun.
Absolutely.
I am being so grateful for everything. And if we can actually bring everything down to a moment of gratitude, wow, I feel good now inside just telling you this. It's like, it's a beautiful feeling, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've started a project to help people after GLP-1s, because what I've been seeing is this rage about this glorification from the celebrities to the people that are just using this as a, and I'm not talking the people that could be using this as a tool that may need it, but this, I don't care, I just have to take this shot. Those people, I see there's going to be, in about a year, maybe two, there's going to be a serious blowback from these people that don't realize what they're doing. And it's all part of this. I just did a video yesterday, how it's the sun. Everything is the sun. And when you don't realize that everything that we do is comes from the sun, and how this ties into that is nature, grounding, cold exposure, heat, it's all those things that are beyond the diet that, you just take an injection or whatever you're doing. If you don't grasp that whole concept, it all falls apart, because, you start spinning your wheels about, what am I doing? It's the sun, man. And it's so funny that you said that, because, all the elements, we're nothing without it. And isn't it funny? Another thing that they tell us to stay out of it as much as possible. They tell us it causes skin cancer. Love it.
So ancestral health, I've got the sun right in the middle, and then all the little icons coming around. I mean, I've done it sort of a bit of a theme of an Aztec style theme, but it's the ancestral living. Yeah, it's.
And I mean, I feel now, like, just staring at the screen, I'm pissed off, because I enjoy talking to you, and I know I kind of have to do it, but I don't want to be looking at this artificial light crap, because if I could just be out in the sun all day long, which maybe one day this will be, because that's my dream, is to have a outside studio, and but yeah, it's crazy, man. And I think that's something that not a lot of people touch on. They forget that, they hear us carnivores or ancestral, and they think immediately meat, bleh, and it's like, this is connection, like, I believe anyway. So
yes, it is connection, and it like I was saying, because I put it down to one of the factors, as I say, being so clean, and then maybe because we're on ketones and the brain's working so clearly, and I mean, we can touch on the pineal gland as well at some point, but I mean, I distill all my water, because I don't want any fluoride. I don't want, and I have.
I got my distiller right there.
So, and I've been doing that for years, and so each of these that I improve the quality of my life, and wearing wool and linen and cotton and okay, I've got to wear plastic sometimes because I've got to wear those speed suits. There's nobody's got a wool a wool suit, and it's pretty visible swimming in a triathlon with it. But what I'm trying to say, if I spend most of my time with natural fibers and with this distillation, so actually my body will be becoming cleaner. Whether it's an antenna or whatever you want to think, it's an aerial or a receiver or a transmitter. Yeah. I strongly believe that. Well, then I'm going to be cleaner for receiving or transmitting or whatever energy, the photons from the sun, whatever we want to consider. It's all there. And, there's so many ideas for the next book from this sort of basis. So
I love it, man. And I can't help but notice above you, you've got an ohm, you've got Metatron's cube, you have the flower of life. I mean, behind me, it's sort of.
I smiled when I saw that. Yeah, this is where we live our life. I mean, I have them tattooed all over my body as well. It's something that I enjoy, and it's one of my earliest tattoos is the Egyptian winged sun disk. So I've got it right across my chest. So when I stand there on triathlon with my arms out, I've got this great big winged sun disk, and above it, love life. This is so.
Yeah, it's funny because that's something that a lot of people, because I teach breathwork. We have classes.
Yes.
My partner's a Reiki master. She's into a lot of the energetic work, sound healing, and this is the stuff that people like. They kind of look at me or they look at us and they say, like, how can you be spiritual and be doing this? What are your thoughts on that? Like, how do you respond to people that go like, we should be eating, say, just fruit, or maybe even eating nothing at all? What do you say to those people?
It's really interesting because I try to avoid these conversations as much as I can. And I think it's another one of the things we eat in this way. We are so calm. Once upon a time, quite an angry man. I'd have probably used my fists to defend. Now I'm just so chilled and so relaxed because of this way. So really, I try to avoid these discussions. But when they start to push it and they start to ask, I especially the vegans and the vegetarians, and they talk about the ethics and the death of the animal, and I say, please don't go down this route, because I want you to get involved, if you are going to, with the harvest, with agriculture, and actually see how many deaths there are to put your 1 kilogram of wheat onto the table. Not only that, the pesticides and everything else, and then if you want to, because they're always going about my meat decimating the Amazon rainforest, I said, well, I can't use a farmer any closer than the one that's behind my house. He's an award-winning farmer. He's so, if you go and talk to him, he loves every single animal. He takes care of them. They live in paradise. Okay, there's going to be a death. Of course, there's going to be a death. But it goes to the local abattoir, and the butcher that then provides is award-winning butcher. If I said to them about that it's decimating the Amazon, they wouldn't even know where the Amazon was. So it's if we start to go down that route, I could probably live on one beef stock, one bit of cattle for a year.
Yeah.
I mean, Anna bought an entire sheep here in the UK with sheep, with lambs, beautiful. And she bought it and then froze it all. And it's feeding us for almost a year. Now that's potentially could be one life taken. And not only that, and I think I touched on it with you before, because when we sit down for a meal, we sit there and we might not even talk to each other, and we taste it and we look at it, and I can look into Anna's eyes as she's taking that bite of that beautiful meat that we've cooked, and we've cooked it to perfection, and we've cooked it with the best salt and the best butter and the best ingredients that we can. And we will look at each other, and anybody looking in will think, well, that's a very strange, those two are strange. But actually, we're taking gratitude down to the very, very basics. We are thanking that animal for the life, for how that's ended up on my plate. And I really think if I ate the other way, the vegan way, how would I be able to do that? How would I be able to thank the avocado from Israel or wherever they're flying it in from?
Right?
Yes, exactly. And all the insects that have been taken to transport it there, and I mean, in a harvest, I was, my grandparents are farmers, and there was mice, there's rabbits, there's all types, and it's a pretty horrible death that they'll get chopped up by the machinery, plus all the others from the pesticides. Anyway, so it's I don't know if that answered your question, what you're asking me about the spiritual side.
This is the conversation that you know, I think it's the next level stuff where you know, there's people. I've had talks with people that are, you know, basically, you know, long and short, they've said, like, you know, if you're buying anything from a grocery store, that's torture and murder. And I kind of agree with them. Like, I mean, the mass production, factory farming, factory cages, I do not support that. I do my best to do what I can ethically, if you will. But I mean, there's arguments out there that are saying, you know, if we're all life and we're just levels of awareness, plants will be sentient. Plants would have consciousness. So ripping a life form out of the ground by the root, you could argue there's a little bit of you know, violence there. Like, I mean, if we have to really put it on the table.
And actually, they will go as far as defending themselves, probably greater than an animal will do. I mean, we look at the plant, how they put up that chemical defense system, and that's what's causing most people the problem. So there's a reason for that, them defending themselves. Whereas, and I apologize to anybody who'll disagree with this, but my grandfather farm sheep, and sheep are big here in the UK, and sheep will go onto the hillside that they cannot do any agricultural farming whatsoever because they're quite steep. You get the tiniest little bit of grass. They provide, I'm wearing a wool top here now, a merino wool. They provide the wool to their sheep. They provide the leather, the sheepskin, and then you eat nose to tail. There's nothing else that could live on that hillside. And then they open up the gate, and these sheep will wander in to, yes, of course, to their death, but they're going to be used, they're going to be eaten, every little part of it. You almost, if you looked at it and you were trying to produce the perfect food source with the right quantity of amino acids and fat content, there it is on that hillside, as placid as anything, living on the grass that nothing else could probably survive on, and then feeding us. And I'm thinking, if I was going to plant an animal for a food source, that would be the animal I would design if I was a designer. You know?
Yeah, well, that comes down to that natural thing. I mean, there's people out there that in the like the frugivores and you know, people that I think the problem is that we're living in a modern time, like arguably whenever we're living right now. And I think we've been poisoned and corrupted so badly that we forget the natural order. We forget that, you know, I'm not saying we need to be eating every day. I don't really necessarily believe that. I'm trying to experiment with fasting. I'm trying to experiment with in my lifestyle, the what I require and what I want are two different things. And I'm really trying to figure that out, where the balance is. And I think obviously you're a performance athlete. You're going to be different. It's going to be different than somebody who's not a performance athlete. But where we've come to, how far removed from being a true natural human is, that's where, you know, we have to compensate. And, you know, like you said, you can eat the anti-nutrients, the toxins, the man-made pesticides and herbicides. I think from what I've seen, there is just as much impact on your health and your lifestyle if you eliminate as many toxins and chemicals as you can. And and just eating, you know, we'll say one animal a year, how much of that modern day stuff are you actually getting rid of? I would argue probably a shit ton. You're not eating seed oils, you're not eating sugar, you're not eating glyphosate, you're not eating any of the herbicides, pesticides. And then you distill your water, and you're trying to get the water from the truest source, because we distill it and then I just add minerals back into it.
Me too, yeah, add my own minerals.
And, you know, like we're doing stuff, but I think it's this modern day manipulation of what is the fact. And I think, you know, from following you on social media, talking to you, like, just it's funny how we get branded I don't want to say, to for lack of better terms, we get branded the bastards. And I
Yes,
think
yeah.
that's sort of false. Like it's not a logical, true explanation, if you will, because I mean, I'm inspired by the way you live because I see similarities, and
There's
when I
so
have
many
these conversations with people, I look to see what I could do being better, especially from a spiritual side. And I'm looking at your wall thinking there's not a chance in hell that you're not thinking outside yourself, you know?
Yes, very much so. I do. Yeah, the journey that I've been on this last year, it's incredible. And then the people I'm meeting, and as I say, with those synchronicities, and there's no coincidence. When I meet them, it's like yourself, and we have so much in common. It doesn't surprise me because it's expected. You know, we talk about maybe doing things together in the future. It will happen. I'm pretty sure there'll be whether it's a shared with between myself and Anna and you and your partner. But there's plenty there. I mean, I've told you this story before. When I met Anna, and she'd been a vegetarian, she'd been a vegan as well for 33 years, and she traveled with the Hare Krishna movement and was trying to get to the basics of it. So when I first met her, and we went for a beautiful walk, and she was taking me on this beach, and we got down to the beach, and she says, "Take off your socks and shoes." I said, "Okay," and we'll walk barefoot. And she says, "Leave them there." And I said, "What happens if somebody takes our shoes and socks?" And she goes, "Well, they're in more need of them than we are." I said, "Okay, let's just carry on walking." I love this woman. "How far do we walk?" She says, "Well, we walk to the end of the land." And I said, "Sorry, just recap. I want to know how long we're walking, how far." And because she's Polish, she goes, "We walk to the end of land." And of course, where she was taking me was literally, it's called Spurn Point, and it ends. That was the end of land. There was no land left.
Literally.
And so then I found a stone and I wrote gratitude and love on it, these beautiful words, and I planted it there in the sand. And then we walked back, not talking much. And then we got back to where the socks and shoes were, and I said, "They're still there." She says, "Of course." It's fine. And then she said, "I'll have to eat." She said, "Do you want to eat?" And I said, "No." She goes, "I'm really sorry. I'm really hungry." And I said, "I'm fine," because we hadn't had that discussion. And then she got out this great big huge salad, and the volume they've got to eat, and the tofu and everything else in there. And we carried on. A couple of hours later, she said, "I've got to eat the next lot." I said, "How much do you eat?" She goes, "I have 5 portions a day, but I'm in training." And I'm trying to justify it, but it was huge. And you could see, when you see a cow or something just grazing, just not enjoying the food at all. And I'm saying, "Do you enjoy that?" And then at the end of the day, she said to me, "I've noticed that you haven't eaten." I said, "It's okay. I ate yesterday." She goes, "What? You didn't have any breakfast?" I said, "No." And she says, I said, "I'll be fine until tomorrow, really. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine." So then that conversation came up. She goes, "Well, what do you eat?" And I was trying to avoid it because everything was going beautifully. And I suddenly turn around to say I'm a carnivore to a vegetarian who's eating that way for ethical reasons. But Anna being from the scientific world, and she's got a master's degree in biological engineering, she was interested. She looked at it from other point. She goes, "I want to know more about this, what you're doing." Well, now she's a full-blown carnivore.
Yeah.
And she's been eating this way. But one of her biggest fears was that she would take on the anger of the animal when she consumed it. And because she was in the spiritual world, she did not want to. And I smiled and I said to her, so I said, "Where do you get this idea from?" She says, "Well, it's what we get told." I said, "Okay." And I said, "And so you're looking at the stereotypical male burger eater that goes out onto the street on a Friday, Saturday night, drinking beer and fighting?" And she goes, "Well, yes." I said, "But what else is he eating?" It's not. I said, "I am now a full-blown carnivore, and I have never been so calm." People can say in the schools, students can say whatever they want to me, whatever name, and it really does not even get their hairs on my neck, nothing prickling, because it means nothing. My answer would be, "Oh, I'm sorry that you feel like saying that to me or trying to upset me. Maybe we need to talk about it." Because I am so calm. And so Anna's now found, she goes, "Why didn't anybody ever tell her that the calmness now is beautiful?" Her meditations are far better than they were previously. She, she's getting closer to where she wants to be from eating meat, which So she's thanking me for introducing, and again, that coincidence of discovering me and rediscovering her, and
Yeah.
it helped each other.
Well, that's very similar to Fleur and I. Like when she found me, she was suffering from endometriosis for her whole adult life, and it was I mean, I can't even begin to explain, because I still see she's probably 90 to 95% better, but she still has usually one day that could be sketchy depending on how we've been over the month. But it was almost like this synchronicity, perfect storm thing when we met, because I've helped her with her diet. She's helped me with my energetic spiritual growth. And I find now, just kind of with that thing we talked about, that I don't want to call it carnivore clarity. I just think it's getting back into balance with nature. My brain is receptive. And I mean, like, when we talk about the pineal gland, like the colors that I'm seeing when I meditate now, it's like, it has to be something, because I'm thinking from a logical brain, my eyes are closed, there's light behind me, nothing's changing, but things are going everywhere. I'm like, explain that. That's not vision. That's
Yes, I agree with you.
Light manipulation. That's something going on. And it's wild, because a lot of people that I talk to, especially in my classes, in our classes, we're still at that place where we don't impose or enforce our will, because a lot of people talk about their diseases, that they talk about how their bodies are, they're waiting for a diagnosis almost. And it's like, in your own time, if you're ready, you want to talk about stuff, like, we're here. But it's really, really interesting how that, like Anna, we were taught and told things that aren't true. They're just not.
No, that's true. I like what you were just saying there about with your meditation and seeing the colors, and I see geometric shapes now, and when I read about ayahuasca and the shamans, and they're describing a lot of people describing the same shapes, and I'm thinking, well, I'm achieving that from living this way and breath work, so and meditation. I'm starting to have the same visions, the same ideas, and clarity, just feeling. We can't describe it to anybody else. It's really difficult for them to take on board, isn't it? Really?
No kidding. And I mean, from my background is a lot of drugs and alcohol. From my basically late 20s all through my 30s, it was not good. Like, I mean, I thought I was fine at the time, and then when you start looking back and go, holy crap. Anyway, I did DMT 15 years ago, and I was aware enough to know that it wasn't something to party with. It wasn't like it was a prison. I was like, if I want to do this, I want to like have a quest. And I'd already seen the spirit molecule, and I had this DMT experience, and it blew my mind. It told me everything has a frequency, everything vibrates, everything is alive, and I had an experience, a godly experience, very mothering, very feminine. But I wasn't ready to receive any of that. Like, it was kind of like a wow thing. Then, cut 15 years, well, 6 years ago now, this is after a decade plus from that experience, I started doing breath work. And all of a sudden, I started having these the same things were happening. And I'm like, okay, there is something here. And breath work led me into deeper meditation, led me into Kundalini yoga. And it's all, and if my brain wasn't able to process this, it would not have. And is it all the diet? I think it has to be a very big part of it. And so the people that say that there can't be spiritual, I mean, I honor every meal, every animal that I've ever consumed. I'm now, the gratitude. I say a prayer, and Fleur and I, we would just. It's a blessing. And I think that's something that gets taken away out of context from the normies, if you will, because they relate it to battery farms, processed feedlot cattle. And I wish maybe one day this could happen, but to have a natural environment, to be as close to nature as possible with good people that are just there, not none of this bullshit. And I think we get caught up in the mainstream crap, and it's designed just to to take you out of that balance, to take you out of
But
alignment.
what you're describing there is almost back to the tribal systems, the ancestral way, and everything. When you think about that, does look beautiful from the outside, and why wasn't it not? Telling stories, sitting around the campfire, sharing, looking after the elderly, the young, and everybody working together for the same purpose, which is to survive. But not only just survival like they do now, it was not just existing, it was a beautiful way as well, wasn't it? It's I mean, I've been reading quite a lot recently about the Essenes, that the communal culture of the Essenes there, and they were meat eaters. There was only a small percentage of them that chose to eat vegetarian, but they also knew that it was bad for them. You know, when they're looking at the Dead Sea Scrolls and a lot of these manuscripts. And so why were they eating meat? Because not for any particular spiritual reasons, because it was well, it will have helped them, but it was available, not a problem. But it wasn't taboo. It wasn't outlawed. It was never mentioned in any of the literature. So interesting, though, I think.
Yeah, and well, I mean, Fleur and I, like, I mean, I've read the Bible, so I've been down like but the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, like the Nag Hammadi scriptures, the Dead Sea Scroll, like this is all fascinating to me. But I'm now reading the Bible again with Fleur, with this just to observe it, just to see what, and so many things like pop out. Like it's unreal how many times it's contradicting to what, you know, let alone Ellen G. White and the Seventh-day Adventists, like it's right there in the Bible. I mean, if you want to look at the first, if we were created in God's image, you know, we could go way down with that one. But Cain and Abel, God chose meat. He just, it's right there. Like,
and I mentioned that in one of the chapters. I discussed that at length about Cain and Abel.
And I don't think that's necessarily the reason why we should, but I mean, they're when you're taking an objective view of this stuff, you have to kind of take it for what it is. And I mean, I think meat has been a very big part of survival, let alone thriving, for a very long time. And I think our modern days are just, we manipulate these sayings, slogans, and it gets really hard to talk to somebody, for one, who's never read the Bible, and they're telling you that the Bible says to eat fruit. I love it.
The Subconscious Christ, my latest book, it was published a week ago.
Nice.
The Subconscious Christ, there we go. How Jesus speaks to the hidden heart.
I love it.
So that's been about a year of research into that. And how when rereading the Bible, and I quote a lot of scripture in there, a lot of the words that they use is communication with your subconscious mind. And then the meals that they were eating lamb, and the Passover, and the traditional was lamb meat, and all this communication with this healing was directly to the subconscious mind.
And I think like what I'm like fascinated by, like the Rosicrucianism, where the Christ consciousness is the center, and you have two devils. You have materialism, ultimate materialism, and then you have ultimate spirituality. Both of them are trying to pull you apart. And if you're all of one and none of the other, well, that would argue that that's not good. So the Christ consciousness is aware of it all, but chooses the center path. And I think that's beautiful, because it just sort of, you know, and I do like a 2.5 day fast every month when the moon's in my star sign, when the moon's in Virgo. And it's the sacred secretion. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it's to do with the Christ oil, the spinal fluid.
Yes, I do. Yep.
And when I first heard the rules of this, to try and elevate and open up your pineal gland and invoke this healing process, they said, don't eat animals. No animal products. And I was like, well, okay, that kind of makes sense for this time, but I'm fasting. I'm not eating vegetables. I was like, I did it once. I tried to eat 2.5 days of vegan, and I was miserable, man. Foods, wasting things, spending so much money on a bowl of, and I was like, I'm just fasting. So that actually started down that sort of fasting for outside just losing weight, you know, and do you fast?
Yes, well, I fast every day, 24 hours, well,
Yeah.
23 hours. So I just eat one meal a day. I eat quite late on the evening. So I train fasted, I race fasted, everything I do is fasted. When I go and see Anna on the weekend, sometimes we may have a lunch or something like that because it's something we enjoy doing together, or a breakfast, but it was something very simple. But the rest of the week, when I fast every day, now I never purposely fast longer than 24 hours. I don't know if it's because I just find it for my racing and for fueling. But when I've gone to races, say I've landed in Spain and everywhere is closed on that particular Sunday, and I thought, I'm not going to go to a restaurant because I can't eat any of their food. So I might not eat since Saturday, then I'll eat it again on the Monday. So yes, I do have longer fasts, but I love that feeling. I love that fasted feeling. I mean, the last time I ate, now when I think of it, was probably this time, well, no, being a bit earlier, yesterday. And all I had was some lamb shoulder, and that's salty lamb. That's all I had. I haven't had anything since. Now, then there's another one as well, because it makes us feel so good, and we do feel good. And people say, oh, it's placebo. And I start to say, yeah, but when does that placebo become real? Because you can call it placebo, you can call whatever you want. But if I feel good, then I'm good. You know, I feel good. And I've been doing it for 8 years. And the data and everything's telling me I'm getting faster and fitter and healthier and younger, and I've got less gray hairs and my teeth. Everybody tells me how good I'm doing. My skin's getting better. So this placebo, when's this placebo going to stop then? You know, when's it? So
what do you say to the people that have sort of jumped ship and that are starting, you know, to incorporate carbohydrates because we need them? What do you do? What do you say to that?
I dabbled last year in one of the races. Somebody had said, oh, I'd read it somewhere, and I don't know who said it, but it was a fat will burn on a carbohydrate flame. So I thought, you know what, if I need to fuel this fat for this race, I will try a little bit of carbohydrates before it. Well, I felt rubbish. It didn't really work for me. Okay. And then I thought, where are they coming from? That's a silly idea that you need a carbohydrate flame to be able to burn the fat. We can produce glucose, and we produce plenty of it. I had a doctor that pulled me up at a race last year, and he says, Duncan, I'm getting a little annoyed hearing you talking of selling your seed oil. And I said, just back up and explain to me. I know what seed oil is. He says, well, you're talking about this carnivore way of living. He says, I've got to say something about it. And I said, well, you don't have to say anything about it. And I said, and it's not me trying to sell this seed oil. People are coming to ask me because they're saying, what are you doing to get so fast? Yeah. And I'm an honest person. I will tell them what I'm doing. Because for one, they start to think I'm taking performance-enhancing drugs. They're thinking I'm the cleanest athlete. I don't even take a paracetamol, Nurofen, nothing for 10 years. So I will, if they ask me, I'll tell us. And he goes, and then he points his finger at me and says, do you know what your brain operates on? And I said, well, I know what my brain is running on, and I can guess at what yours is. And so he was saying, you need carbohydrates. Don't be telling people they don't. I said, well, to say that I haven't had a single carbohydrate for weeks now, and I've just smashed this race, I don't see when that's going to be a problem. And the other thing is, the clarity of thought, the speed. I mean, I was in the kitchen the other day. I got something out of the cupboard, and I work efficiently, and I work like this. And something out of the cupboard must have fallen as I'd had it. And then I just turned around and caught it in my left hand without even seeing it falling. Where that came from, and I looked at it, I just smiled to myself because it was almost like a sixth sense that I probably reached for the cupboard, and my subconscious mind knew it was just tumbling, didn't hear it falling, and just to catch it. And instead of going to catch it where people do where the object is, it's like going underneath it and just having it, whether there's a spice jar or something. And this has happened quite a few times. And when you're racing, especially on track with a large group of cyclists, you're going so fast, you've got to take that racing line. You've got to make that decision so quickly. Riders can fall in front of you. You'll see it happen loads of times on the TV with these, and then they all go down. Yeah. When they all go down, I'm the one on the other side of it thinking, how did I just get through that group of men that had fallen? I mean, people used to say, oh, it's the guardian angel. Yeah, perhaps. Okay. But But where has that come from? Has it communicated with me? Is it my subconscious? Is it communicating through my subconscious? Am I receiving it through my pineal gland as a transmission? Whatever.
You're channeling a grand racer in the astral.
Whatever. I really don't know. And I just smile to myself and think that's beautiful. But weren't the original hunter-gatherers, when they were actually going hunting and they were hunting megafauna and dangerous creatures, they would have had to been thinking at such a high level, almost having that sixth sense of awareness because of the predators and everything around them. So if they would have been in a ketogenic state, because they may not have eaten for 2 days, they'll have definitely been fasted. They will, and so that level of alertness will have been around them all the time. They would have been in a far better situation than we are now as well, because they will have had other skills that we certainly don't have now.
Yeah. Let alone vertical lines, they can see better, and
whether it's their ancestors telling them, look, just be careful now, or their ancestors gone past it, whatever the channeling was, the communication, there will have been something there without a doubt. And he's just been aware and so anyway, that was something else. That was quite an interest. Do you ever find your perception of time? Can you shift time ever? Does it ever?
Since I've been aware of a few things. Like time absolutely is sped up. Like that's one thing that I can say, like, and it's more than just being older and understanding things. It seems like it has. Maybe it's the information that we're constantly getting bombarded with and it just seems faster, but that's one thing. But I also find myself in present moments for way longer. Like in a moment, like our conversation right now, it feels like we've been talking for hours, but 2 minutes at the same time.
Yes, I know exactly what you're saying.
Right? And it seems like, I do believe that time isn't what we think it is. Like there's some way deeper things going on.
So most of the religions, most of the spiritualism, they talk about being in the present, in the here and now, right? Being here and now. So you're just saying that then when you're saying you actually can focus on that more. I believe that I have started to. I don't change it. Sometimes it's just my perception of that time.
Yeah,
it's like testing my bike when you mentioned a while ago, and I was out on the top, and I was thinking, I've got another gear to go. I didn't know I was going faster than I'd ever been before. It didn't actually feel that quick, it just. But it'd been in a beautiful moment when I met Anna. And she didn't know much of the racing world. And I said, I've got one more race to do at the end of the season. But I've achieved everything I need to. I've got all my qualifications. It's a bit of a dead rubber race. I'm going to go to it because I paid my entry fee and just attend it. But I'm not too concerned. And she says, oh, well, enjoy it. And I said, oh, no, I don't think I go to enjoy races. I go to achieve. And she goes, well, if you're not bothered about the time, go and enjoy it. Look around. Be in that moment. Be in the here and now. And it was on a dual carriageway with lorries, and it's a pretty dangerous race. And you've got all that position, you can almost getting sucked underneath the wheels, and you're focusing. And I remembered her words, and I looked around and I smiled, and I thought, do you know what? I am so grateful to be here, to have the opportunity to be in this level of racing, and I could see where she was coming from. And there was almost a little conversation going in, and I don't know where this conversation came from in my head. And I said to this voice, I said, "Do you like my bike?" And this guy said, "Yeah, bike's great, whatever." I said, "Oh, I've got to concentrate now. Sorry." And this is the voice I'm having this conversation. Got to concentrate because I come into a really tricky bit. And this voice said, "Oh, you'll be fine. You'll be okay." I said, "All right, thanks." I just pushed on. And at the end of the race, I smashed my time, and I wasn't even trying. I wasn't trying. I felt as though I was going slower. And so I said to Anna, I said, I got a really good time. She goes, but did you enjoy it? I said, I did. Yeah, I really did. I was having some conversation with some bloke out there in my head.
It's interesting that you say that too, because like Fleur, she's a hypnotist, and she's like, when she explains people trance states, like how many times we're actually in trance, we don't realize it, but it's that being aware of it is wild. And it like the best example is driving a car. How many people actually think about driving or are driving? They're on cruise control. It's happening. They're in trance, and they don't even realize that they're, you've just driven 10 miles, and where did the time go? What happened? You don't even realize it. You just pull up and then you get out and you go into whatever you're doing. But it must be the same thing as an athlete in flow. Like your flow state is sort of auto, but you might have just taken it to the next level and observed your flow state. That's wild.
Yes, I think so. I do think so. Years ago, during my teenage years, I used to fence. I don't know if I mentioned that to you before. So my sport was fencing, which was in fencing with the sword fighting, there's 3 weapons, saber, epee, and foil. And mine was the epee, which is any part of the body is a target. And I fenced internationally, and my coach was a Russian. It was from Kazakhstan, and I'd go to tournaments with him, and he was very, very much like a Cossack, almost like wiry hair, and he would shout his commands at me. And if we'd been to a big international, and it was long, we're traveling back, he wouldn't speak to me if I'd lost and things like that, because and he learned to fence with sharps instead of like we do in the UK. So his defense got second to none. He was superb. But there was one time when I said, I can't go to this tournament. And he says, why not? You've paid your money. You need the points. You need the ranking points. And I said, no, I've got tonsillitis. And I used to have tonsillitis every year. Don't know why. I don't know what it came from, whether it just used to happen similar to, and I was flat on my back. I said, I'm really poorly. He says, no, just go to it. He says, win the first bout. Because of my ranking, I was going to be fencing somebody who was pretty weak. And he says, just win that, then go home, because those points are enough. And I said, okay, I'll go along. Of course, you see where I'm going with this story. I won that first one. He says, no, you might as well just go on to the next one. Because I then beat the guy that wasn't supposed to beat. So I took his ranking and I went higher. So next thing, when it got to about 4 hours later, me thinking I could go home, and it was televised as this. I said, now we got Smart representing Great Britain. I was in the final. I'm thinking, this is just incredible. And I never won any of these big events before. I'd got knocking on the door. And this guy that I was fencing, I've never beaten him. He was like number 1. He came to attack me, and I'm thinking, why is he in slow motion? And I swept his plate, and it would beep. Every time it would beep, Smart 3, and it just kept going on to this. And I'm thinking, this is just getting silly. I could showboat now. I could stand here and just whatever he did, I was taking it. Now, that was in the flow. That was in the zone. That was something I've never actually ever experienced since. I would love to have got into it. But what I think was going on there, Tony, was I wasn't a carnivore then. Obviously, I was eating carbohydrates. I was taking energy drinks, all that type of thing. Yeah. But because I was so poorly, I could not eat anything. I couldn't consume take any liquids. So I was in a really fasted state, but such a low fasted state. Plus, I wasn't looking at winning it. I wasn't looking at the next round. I was looking at every single point, not just one bout, a point at a time. That's all I was looking at. Because I was going to be going home after that one, I never looked any further. So not only that, I was in that perception of time changed massively. But it must have been real, because I wasn't going to be to take points at choice out of this guy, And then I only realized now what was going on, and it was because I was fasted. I wasn't taking any painkillers or anything, because I didn't need it, but I was just in such a state. So
like people talk about martial artists, how they become, they see the fight or whatever, the confrontation from above, and they're actually not in the body. They're seeing it happen. And, I've been fascinated by that stuff, because what happened to me was I was in this chanting session with my yoga class, and we chant on like the solstice, the equinox, and like certain specific lunar events. And we chant for like hours. So, 4 hours something. And you just get into this thing where all of a sudden things are happening. It's wild. You just separate from your mind, and like the body and the chanting is going on. And all of a sudden you're having a different conversation, and it's wild. Well, what happened to me one time was all of a sudden I was standing looking at my bed and my cat. And I'm standing there looking at my cat going, interesting. I'm looking, what the hell is going on? and I sucked back into my, and that was like, okay, there's something to this. There is something, because that was insane. And people are like, well, yeah, you were just dreaming. What was I dreaming? I was standing there. And when I realized, I was like I've been trying to replicate that. I've been studying this stuff.
Yes.
And it's fascinating because I think there's times where we just get into these states and we don't realize that we are. And I think getting the awareness of trying to achieve that, it's pretty amazing, because there has to be something more. Our thoughts, our awareness, our consciousness. And that was my experience of being outside. And I was outside of my body, whether it was my physical, it was insane. And that was like, okay, I'm a believer. This is real. This is my scratch. I've tried to replicate it. I can't. I think it's going to happen in its own time, but I've been doing deeper meditations to go to sleep. I've been studying out-of-body experiences and astral projection. I've gotten to the point where I can sort of lucid dream. I can turn it on. So what's that even? Like, I don't know if you dream or I get lucid dreams, but once you start trying to do it and it happens, it's wild. So yeah, that's kind of my next.
It's brilliant. Beautiful what you're saying there. Yeah, there is definitely something out there. There has to be. I mean, I read about it all the time. I hear about this all the time, and sometimes just touching on it as well. And I mean, I'm a problem solver. I always have been. I think it's come from the engineering background, but even as a small child, I could. And engines. So for some reason, something about engines, I just seem to know about them. This is way before the internet, about anything like that. I could hear an engine and almost know. And I don't come from a mechanical background, anything like that. And I still do that now, even with my bike. Or I can go into this meditative state where I can actually step into the problem. So I go into it. And I did this when I was in work. I never realized I was doing that. There was one of these for the British Steel, it's called a slab caster. You pour molten metal and they're huge, like the size of a 4 or 5 story building. And we used to send them all around the world, these slab casters. So once you start to build it, it's to go in between them. It's really difficult to find the problem. But I could go into it with my mind. I could take the blueprint and look at the blueprint and actually go into that and almost turn it round 3-dimensional. And it's a really beautiful skill. And I never told anybody about this until really the last couple of years. And it's when I'm fixing my bike and I'm doing this. And then recently I was listening to something about Nikola Tesla, and he had the same ability. Yeah. And I was thinking, whoa, I didn't know anybody else could do this. And he was doing the same thing.
Well, you're kind of explaining like 4th dimensional thinking. Like I actually learned on a mushroom trip. I went on a mushroom journey. I was fasted for what was it? 3 days fasted because I wanted to do it for spiritual reasons, to see what would happen. And I had a conversation, and it showed me what the 4th dimension was your perspective of something. Every other perspective other than yours, that's the 4th dimension. So when you're talking about the blueprint, you're going inside from a different perspective, the ability to see something from, like, almost physically from a different perspective. That would be the next level. Like, I don't know if you've heard of the Tesseract, but it makes sense. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That does make a lot of sense to me now, what you're saying there. I like that. I like that idea. Now, when I studied maths at a pretty high level at university, and when they gave problems to solve, and half the time the lecturers didn't expect you to solve it. It was more the fact that they were giving it to see what your way of solving it would be. But I would solve these problems, and how I would do it is I would step into the equation. I would walk the equation. If I was trying to balance it, I would physically. If it was like an applied mathematics subject, which might be with pendulums, I'd be in there. I'd be working. Yeah. And then a few years ago, I discovered this book. It was called Archimedes Codex. And when I started to read this book, I think somebody bought me because it was mathematics, and I like Archimedes and fascinated by some of those ideas. The Archimedes Codex was discovered on a Bible, on a vellum Bible, that his work was written on this leather Bible, which was skin. And then when the early Christians picked it up in North, wherever they were, they skimmed the ink off it. They take this ink off it with a sharp knife, and then they wrote the Bible over the top of it.
Oh, wow.
And how this came about was somebody was looking at this old manuscript, and they, for some reason, they thought there might be something underneath it, so they x-rayed it. So they x-rayed this, and then they could see Archimedes' work underneath it. So this book, Archimedes' Codex, is x-rays. The actual, every page is the x-ray of the Bible, but underneath it is a mathematics. As I'm turning this page, I'm thinking, and I'm seeing mathematics that I know about, but nobody ever teaches. We haven't seen it for 2,000, 3,000 years, but I know it's there.
Yeah.
Wow. I know it's there. And because this is how I've solved my problems. And then I saw it in his book as well, because there's a saying where Archimedes said, give me a lever large enough, long enough, and I'll move the world. Which you go, okay, but you need a fulcrum. You need somewhere to pivot that. No, I know what he means now. It doesn't mean that. It's actually, the lever is his mind. Whatever the biggest of the problem, I will move it. I'll solve it. I can step into that and do that. Yeah. So this Archimedes Codex, it was like, I was breathless reading this, because it's some of the Pythagoras theorems, only the ones I'd come across myself, because that's what I love about mathematics is we're taught a particular method, but actually it's a fluid subject. You could come up with any proof you want, as long as it's a proof and it works. And that's what's beautiful about mathematics. It is to me, it's a fluid subject. And
have you heard much of Terrence Howard? What he's doing?
I think you mentioned him before, didn't you? And I meant to look him up, but no.
Well, it's just his ideas on geometry, and like the thing he created basically was like, to sort of sum it up, he's like, we look at the flower of life, like it's sacred geometry. We can go into the egg, the seed of life, all this stuff. But he's like, we're looking at it from 2 dimensions. And he kind of just, makes it this 3rd dimensional thing. And all his little things, he's building drones now based on the inside of the flower of life, like the shapes that would be inside the circles. And it's got ultimate like leverage and ultimate power he calls it the linchpin. And as you connect these things, it's like, it's limitless power. It's limitless. Like it's unreal. And so many people are hating him. So many people. And it's like, this is the kind of thinking that like,
wow,
it's wild. And anyway, he started, I can't remember what his platform is right now, but it's the Key of Life. I think it is.
Well, I'll find that easy enough.
And then Joe Rogan had him on, and then he was explaining all this stuff, but then Joe Rogan went and got Eric Weinstein,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And Eric Weinstein was kind of giving him a hard time about, well, you have to get accepted by the academia, and nobody's going to listen to you and all this. And he's just like, yeah, but I don't care. Right? Like,
no, absolutely. Like, I agree with him completely.
What's wrong with it? But it's interesting how, like, since I've sort of come alive, and you could say, and broadened my mind, seeing different patterns and relating things to different things with different people's experiences, because, you're a logical thinker, you're a mathematician, you're a performance athlete. What do those all tie together, and how you're sort of navigating it is obviously going to be a little different than me, but it seems like there's something else that is like kind of indescribable, something else that you get to that sort of is the next level. And I think it's part logic, but part spiritual. And I think
I think so. Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
And you're like I love your mind, man. That's why I loved it that you agreed to come back and talk to me. I know we were going to do this, but I was so excited to get sort of deeper. Like I don't know how you feel about, people argue that the carnivore is a cult, and I don't want to even go there, because I think that's just people talking whatever they want. But there is something that certain longtime carnivores, your level, I don't know if you want to call it leveling up, but it seems like you keep leveling up. Like there's always another level.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And it's, Yeah, I often hear that about the cult, and I've met some interesting people on the journey, and I met some people that, well, I've been invited to quite a few carnivore groups here in the UK, and some of them are absolutely fascinating because what I've done, I walked in there and introduced myself, and they've all introduced, and nearly everybody I met in that room had found this way of living to heal themselves of something.
Yeah.
And I felt a bit of a fraud because I didn't. I came into it as a healthy person just to get healthier. But that's not a bad thing. You know, the side effects, and I call them side effects in a joking way, that like the brown, I've got less gray hair and the healthier skin, and all these things don't get sunburnt now. And when I'm out there competing, all this beautiful and this clarity of mind as a side effect of eating this way, I've come across them by accident. But then when I see these genuine people that have discovered it and they have healed themselves from incredible things, and it makes me change my mind. Then I also met quite a few that I'm also thinking, almost, are they fake? And I don't want to use the word fake. It's almost as though they're in it for another reason. They're in it for another reason. They're in it, and yeah, fine. And I never begrudge anybody making any money in whatever way they want to do, as long as it's not harming anybody, it's not harming me. That was what I was going to mention to you, that the BBC did a documentary. It's going to be out in May time, and they're talking about the different food ways of living. I think they're probably going around the vegetarians, the vegans, but they went to one of these conventions to talk to the carnivores, and so I'm pretty sure they will portray us as a load of lunatics or sort of thing. I'm pretty sure, but I know from any interview like that, they can cut it, they can portray you any way they want.
That's why I love doing lives, man. I love doing lives because
and there's quite a few people there that were saying, oh, because they're doctors and they're worried how they would be portrayed. I said, I've got nothing to lose. And said, but you're an author. I said, no, mine sell books. If people think I'm crazy, because I spoke exactly as it was. And the lady doing the interview, she's very popular here in the UK. She goes all around the world doing these really hardcore interviews. She's called Stacey Dooley. So I went and there was a break from the filming. And I said, can I have a word with you? And she goes, of course you can. I said, I just want 2 minutes of your time, but my 2 minutes will improve your life and change your life forever. She goes, well, I can't say no to that, can I? So I started to talk to her. And the next thing, she signaled the cameras. They came over, they mic'd me up, and she said, well, we want to go live. Well, we're not live. We want to record this. I said, you can do. And I spoke to her about it, and I started to talk, and I said, I could probably look at you now and know that you may have digestive problems. And she looked, how do you know? I said, well, I'm just pretty sure I can because I can see on your complexion. She goes, well, I'm wearing makeup, and this is on the camera. I said, yeah, but I know that because you probably you'll eat wheat, you'll eat vegetables. Well, I always eat salad, and She goes, but I've tried carnivore before, and it didn't work for me very well. And I said, so when you tried it, did you have fat? She goes, no, I don't like fat. So I said, you just ate protein. You were just eating protein and probably your vegetables because I said, it's not going to work. I said, here's my book. Read my book. It will change your life.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's it. I mean, and it's funny because you look at both sides of the spectrum, and this sort of explains the sugar diet as well, but which obviously I do not endorse that at all. But when you're eating one macronutrient and not the others, there's a word. Protein would be rabbit starvation. It's the body not supposed to do it. And I mean, this isn't a question if the sugar diet or an all-fat diet works or not. It's the balance of nature, and it comes back down to nature. Like we just look where the food, what has what in what food from where, and you'll see protein and fat.
Now, again, I've got a chapter, and it's called that, protein and fat, because it's nature doesn't serve it protein on its own or fat on its own. It's
And then you said another thing that I wanted to touch on too, because I've found this. I mean, obviously my pale complexion is because of my Canadian winter right now, but I don't burn in the sun. We have talked about sun, how important it is, and people like bullshit. I'm telling you, since I'm going carnivore 6 years ago, I have tried to burn in the sun. I have gone out as soon as the sun's out, I have gone out for 10 hours, 12 hours to get that initial burn that I would get for my whole life. And now I do not. I don't know about, like you said, you don't burn the sun. Let's talk about it because
Well, you can imagine with me being out there all day, and you can be on that bike in the sun, and I could be traveling around Europe, and
yeah,
I had 4 weeks, and I was running up mountains and climbing mountains, Mount Teed in Tenerife, and it was in August, and it's so close to the equator, and the sun's straight above, and people are getting into the shade, and I'm there as a Yorkshireman, not getting burned. Yeah,
yeah,
okay. I did take it to extremes at one point, and I thought, oh, I've got some tender bits on my shoulders there. Next day, it gone. You know, it was
gone.
just,
Yeah,
and then they'd all start saying about how my tan, I get browner and browner very quickly. But it's, you know, to say, they say, well, it's you must have some European ancestry. I said, well, if my grandparents were Scottish, you know, if they're from Scotsman, somebody said, well, you're the most suntanned Scotsman I've ever seen. I said, well, it's probably the way I'm eating, and I
yeah.
generally
Well,
do think that. I think, and I don't know if it was because if it's solely this way of eating or the avoidance of seed oils or whatever. There's probably plenty of factors
yeah, I
because
think I
yeah,
think quite honestly, like sort of my opinion is as your fat cells are turning over, as they're turning over more and more. I mean, there's going to be some instant effects from eating more saturated fat, but I think as your adipose tissue gets healthier, I think that and Paul Mason did a great talk one time about vitamin D being the ultimate sunscreen. And if your cholesterol is functioning and your skin, all that stuff is absorbing everything, you're actually getting protected. And that's one of the things that I always go back to because I was eating arguably healthy at times in my life, but there was no way I didn't go on holiday and if I wasn't aware of it, didn't burn.
yes, yeah,
And
it's
that's changed. That's completely 100% changed. And you know, I'm not I'm not a scientist, so I can't explain it, but it's a thing. And I'm talking to more and more people about this. And if we're supposed to be out in the sun as much as humanly possible, and
um,
our lives are revolving around this, why would we be, you know, why would it be dangerous? It doesn't make sense.
it doesn't make sense. No, that's
When's the last time you used sunscreen?
um, gosh, probably 15 years ago. Probably, well, no, probably just before I started going keto. Maybe it was 10 years ago. Yeah, probably used. I can't really remember using it because it's so accepted. Everybody just says to. But I remember stopping. You know, I remember not using it. And I've
Yeah.
never used any at all.
Yeah. And I was
So
like that big headed like ass at the beach to be like, I don't want to wear sunscreen. You're gonna burn. Whatever. It's just a burn. And I'd burn and then I'd peel and then I'd be fine.
okay.
But now that doesn't happen. I mean, I've noticed the same thing as you. I get red, but the next day it's gone.
Yeah, that's the thing
And
is the
and
healing. It's the recovery that's so quick.
and if that's happening to your skin in that situation, what do you think's happening to your arteries?
Absolutely, and it's other things with the body because I notice because I will train and I'll push it to in the gym and I'm lifting heavier weights than I've ever done, and you can feel that tightness and you can feel it, but the next day I'm ready to go again. It's after
Yeah.
a race. I mean, it used to run marathons and I'd be walking downstairs backwards. You'd be hardly been able to walk the next day. Now I'm ready to go again. You know,
Yeah.
it's the recovery is so much better. So then people are saying, well, perhaps that's why you're getting faster, is because if the recovery is quicker, then you're training more. I said, but are you listening to yourself? Because you almost, you by saying that, you're agreeing that my recovery is better. You know, you can't, there's no hiding it.
Yeah.
It's there in front of you.
Yeah,
You don't need to.
I get that with my friends. They laugh at me. They're like, "What? Well, it's just you. How can it be just me? Like I'm 20 years older than you and I'm fine. And like we just had a crazy workout or some kind of insane physical stuff. And yeah, I feel like my body's been taxed a little bit, but I sleep, I wake up, I'm fine. And it doesn't change. My physical activity, especially like with my life's gone through some changes. Like I mean, I went from, while I was in school studying to be a nutritionist that I'm so happy I'm not one. I went from like moving at like 45 years old. I was a mover because I needed to pay for school. So I was into this physical job, working crazy. And I was recovering faster than every single 30-year-old. Then I went to, I was a laser acupuncturist because I was studying
Okay.
acupuncture. So I went from that to an office job and a clinic, and nothing's changed. Like, I mean, I can still do these physical things and I don't get affected. And I mean, from your side, being like this high performance athlete that does that, from me being not an athlete, I mean, obviously I like to be active and, I do my best to move and, train, but it's not part of my life. But I haven't noticed a single thing changing. I'm still strong as hell. My performance in the gym, if I don't go to the gym for 3 or 4 months, and people say, well, that's because you're recovering better and you're building muscle. And it's like, well, then how many times do you have to go to the gym then? I don't know. It's just wild. It's
interesting. I often get into these conversations at the gym because what blokes are like, and they'll notice the machines and how much weight, and I'm just enjoying it. And then some of the blokes will say, "Oh, but I could do that when I was your age." And I know that I'm older than them, but you think, what point do you say? It's a really awkward situation. I don't want to tell us, well, I'm actually 10 years older than you, probably even more, but just allowing them to think whatever they want.
I asked my friend, my buddy Sean, the other day, I was like, okay, since you've known me over the last few years, how many times have I ever told you I'm hungry? How many times have I ever said we need to go for lunch? Never. And he's like, wow, you don't, because I hear it every day.
Yes, yeah.
What are we? Do you want to go for lunch? No. Do you want to go get something to eat? No.
Well, this is one of the big things that Anna noticed, other than finding that eating meat makes us so calm, beautifully calm, which is closer for her for spiritualism than before, when she'd 30 years of trying to eat vegan and knock on the door of that. So not only that, what she really describes this way of eating as liberating freedom. She feels free.
Yeah.
We can travel wherever we want and not worried about where we're going to get any food. And if you get there, like I said to you, and there's no food available, well, I'll find some next day.
Yeah.
And it is so beautifully freeing, and that's what she's noticed straight away. And then now she goes out with some of her friends, who will say, well, where are we going to eat? And we'll have to stop for lunch. It's because they're still carb burners. But
yeah. Well, Fleur was the same thing, like with her endometriosis. I mean, when I started helping her with her diet about 6-7 months in, was, check this out, the first time in her adult life that she could go traveling. The first time, because she wasn't tied down to 7 days of hell. That is so huge.
Isn't it huge? Yeah.
And if you're talking about the same thing, it's freedom. All of a sudden,
it is freedom.
And giving her a chance to do things that, that she, and it is. I find it's liberating.
And the Western world, all we talk about is freedom, because everybody should have their freedom. We all want our freedom, but then they don't. They go and put themselves into a cattle pen of the carbohydrate burning lifestyles, following the government and following all the guidelines. And they've chosen to lose that freedom. Yeah. They don't realize that it's actually been taken away from them, and they're happily paying the taxes and everything else that comes along with it. Since I've eaten this way, I've retired. I've got out of the work. I don't work anymore, and I love it. And a day doesn't go by when I'm not grateful for that. I've got a challenge for you, Tony. I'm just thinking about it, and you can ask Fleur to do this. You probably may already know the answer to this one. I want you to count how many times you yawn in a day.
Oh my God!
Do you already know this? Have you had this conversation?
Exactly, because when I'm teaching breathwork, I watch my students. I watch them, and I watch how many times they yawn, because as soon as you even going for walks or doing something, and people start yawning, and it's I thought about this a couple of years ago when I was like,
okay, so you've done
Why are they? And I can't think of a time I yawn. That's so crazy that you say that,
because I observed it the other week and I thought about it, and I thought, I don't yawn anymore. And I remember going into those meetings after school when the head teacher would say, oh, we need to have a meeting. And everybody's just ready to drop because the teaching is such a difficult job. You're yawn it for 60, 70 hours a week. And they were all yawning away. And then when I started eating this way, I said, yeah, bring it on. Let's bring on this meeting. Fine.
Yeah.
And the kids in the classroom are yawning away. And they say, oh, sorry, sir, I'm just so tired. And then they say, and people are saying, oh, that's because they probably haven't had the breakfast of the tired. I said, no, they've had breakfast. That's why they're tired. It's like they've had cereals.
Do you know what's funny that you say that? Because like Andrew Huberman brought this to my attention like a few years ago, and it's called a physiological sigh. So it's when to calm down your body, it's just like a double inhale. So a big inhale,
and then an extended,
and then a sigh, letting out.
Yeah.
If you watch, animals do this. Like if a dog's laying on a thing over in the corner, and then they go. That's them equalizing the nervous system. So cats do it too. When you do the cat and cow or the cat pose, and they arch up. That's them regulating the nervous system. Yawning, your body is screaming for calibration, for oxygen. So it makes sense that your something is disconnected at a cellular level would make you yawn. And we just think it's because you're tired or bored. I don't think so. I think your body's physiologically needing that respiration.
Oh, I can't remember the last time I yawned. Maybe I was ill or something. I don't know. But it's like I do not remember yawning.
Yeah, so. It's pretty. That's pretty wild that you say that, because I've noticed that with a lot of people because I watch. Unfortunately, it comes with the territory. I watch people breathe, and I mean, I'm standing in the supermarket or I'm standing like in some public place, and I just want to give people hugs because I just see them breathing, grasping for air through their mouth. And it's like, holy crap, man. Like this is the other level of the other side of like, just, I've seen so many carnivores be good breathers. It's weird.
Yeah. Well, I breath work every day. It's such an important part of my, and I got into it originally to help with my training, same with the yoga, same with the meditation, same with the breath work. But then I've realized they've become more important to me in my life than anything else, really. As in the training, that's more important is those three. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's kind of how I looked at it. Like I saw Wim Hof like years ago, and I was like, oh, cool. I want to breathe because it seems like it's healthy. And then that's where this whole spiritual path, like it lit me up. And now, I mean, I think I don't compromise it. Like that's one of those things that I just, my body needs it, and I love it.
So when I've got a long drive and I'm listening to my audiobook, I'm also doing breath work. And I know some people might say, well, that's dangerous. Well, I know what I'm doing. Don't worry about it. It's not, I'm not going to black out.
Jumping into the, like, I mean, even though I would like to say I'm seasoned, I wouldn't be going to the Arctic, jumping in the water and starting my, I'd probably have to work my way up to that. No.
So when we went to Warsaw and in Poland, couple of weeks ago, and I said, why aren't we going to Spain or Portugal? We'd always go west. It's nice and warm. Because I'd seen the temperature, and it was minus 16 degrees C. You work in Fahrenheit anyway. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit.
No, that's
yeah. So and I said, this is just ludicrous. I'm going to have to take warm coats, hats, gloves. I said, I don't want to be going to such a cold country. And when we got there, it was a different sort of cold. Yeah. It was colder in the UK +2 or something than it was minus 16. So there was one morning, it snowed, and the snow was out there, and I could see the temperature gauge. It was minus 16, and I went and stood outside completely naked in Warsaw. Outside, I'm not on the streets.
I saw the video, man. I saw it. I love it.
And it was just like, wow, and barefooted, and it was beautiful. I went to a couple of health spas over there with the cold water plunges. And as I'm walking down into this cold water plunge, and it was full of about a dozen naked men, and there's me going down there, there's icicles this long hanging off the steel rails going down. And I'm walking into this completely naked into that cold plunge and just sitting there. I'm thinking, wow. And then back up for the sauna masters. And the sauna master gets the heat even hotter in the sauna. I don't know if you've ever seen these, and they call it Valhalla, and they're wafting the heat. And it's up to 90. I'm thinking, wow. And then I'm back in the cold water plunge outside. And it's just like sitting in the middle of Warsaw. And I'm thinking, my life has changed incredibly beautifully. It's just so we're gonna set off traveling around Europe this summer, maybe 5 weeks just driving. We'll drive to Poland and drive around and see a few different countries. And so
how's everything there? Like, I know we got to I would love to touch on it. If you have some time, how are you doing for time? You good?
Yeah, of course.
Because I want to talk about the economy a little bit about in Europe. You're over there on the other side of the pond, and how are things
It's a strange one because I decided a couple of years ago to stop allowing anything negative into my life. So no news, no. But once something happens, you can't help but know about it.
Yeah.
And so then you sort of almost get drawn into it, and because I want to know what's going on there. I haven't really noticed anything. The fuel prices have shot up, and I think because we're on natural gas here and electricity is going rapidly up and things like that. And I mean, I've seen meat prices, I've seen increasing in quite a lot over the last 2 years anyway. So everything is feeling the pinch. Because I don't work, that doesn't really affect me too much on that score.
Right.
But yeah, I think it is going to be a concern. And everybody keeps watching Trump, don't they? But plenty of people are making money out of it, though. Plenty are making.
Yeah, and I think that's probably from my side of things. I mean, I'm kind of on the idea that I'd like to be aware so that the wool isn't pulled from under me.
Yes,
but at the same time, it's ridiculous. I mean, I don't think like people. It's weird because some people, they have their line in the sand, and then they're like, I'm awake, I'm open-minded, I'm this, but then something happens and they just revert back. It's like they morph that agent in the Matrix. They just go right back into left, right, terrorists, all this. It's like, I just want to love and just
I think that's what really hurts me to see that, because it is all about love, and to watch what they're doing to. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to travel a little bit around Islamic countries, and I just love the culture. I love they are so beautiful the way that, and so loving for the families, and they just allowing God to predict whatever's going to happen. And it's
I'm blessed.
Yes.
Across the street from us, we have a halal butcher.
Okay.
And they just finished their Ramadan. They just had
that's Ramadan.
We've become pretty close because we just go across the street. Our cat eats. They grind up meat for our cat. Like they're beautiful people.
I was fortunate to go into mosques in Cairo during Ramadan, and you're welcomed with arms open and say, please come in, and it's absolutely beautiful. I got into a taxi once with this taxi driver, and as I got in, I realized that his son must have been, I don't know, so let's say his son was 15, 16, quite a big young man, and he had cerebral palsy or some problem, and he was laying his head across his dad's lap, and then his feet were across the passenger seat. So his dad pulled up his feet, and then I sat down in the passenger seat of the taxi, and this lad's legs dropped onto my legs. And being a Westerner, I'm like, oh, like this a little bit. This is years ago. And then his dad looked at me and he goes, is that okay? I said, it's fine. And then he's stroking his son's head as he's driving along, asking me where I want to go, and I'm probably going to go to one of the pyramids or something. And then he looked at me, did his dad, because he could see my horror. And he said to me, is it true in your country that you cannot go to work with your son when they're like this? And I said, well, no, you can't. And he goes, so you would not be allowed to drive your taxi with? I said, no, we wouldn't. And he goes, I feel very sorry for you. And I said, what? I'm feeling sorry for you. He goes, no. He says, I choose this. I am blessed that I can spend every day, every hour with my son. He says, can you spend all that time with your son? I said, well, no, because he has to go to school and has to go. And I shifted my mindset on that. And I was feeling sorry for the way he was having to live, but he was actually seeing it as a blessing. And I thought, what a beautiful, and they're both smiling at each other as looking into each other's eyes. I'm thinking, please look ahead where the traffic's going. But he's saying, if God's willing, It's like,
well, that's beautiful, because that's true. I mean, they've done whatever with the people that are, that don't have a lot of means, but they're happy.
Yes.
And that happiness.
And they are a very happy nation. And you often find these countries with less money seem to be happier. The levels of happiness It's
Yeah.
there's a beautiful, you probably read it, a beautiful book by the Dalai Lama. I think he calls it Happiness, and he's trying to describe how you can find happiness in the Western world, and he's to stop searching for those material gains and stop trying to keep looking for something that will make you happy, and just bring it down. And he said, wake up every day as though you're the astronaut that's been told that you're never going to land, and you say bye to everybody, and then the last minute they tell you, you can come back. And how do you feel when you might land in Siberia, you might land in the ocean, you might land in Australia? Doesn't matter. You've landed on Earth, and you kiss the floor. And he says, wake up every day and be like that. And then, you know what, I think it's not always easy, but why not be grateful?
That was kind of one of my, I guess I didn't know it at the time. I didn't actually realize it until you just said that right there. But I smile. I wake up, that first conscious awareness thought, even before I open my eyes, I smile. And the logic is, why not? You're alive. You get to breathe and be one more day in this, whatever, the meat suit, the five senses, this on this realm. And it's like, people go, well, that's silly. I'm like, isn't it silly not to? Like,
yes,
it's that.
Yeah, no, it's silly not to. You're right. And we know how group meditation can work, how it can improve, and the larger number of meditations. So, and most people will be aware of that, because it's okay. Yeah, we can see that. So if you're doing that, why can't one smile make a difference to somebody else and make a difference to, and that vibration will spread out there, and whatever we're transmitting out into the universe, that's going to come bouncing back to everybody else. And we know that photons are attracted to DNA. So if there's photons that are attracted to DNA, you know about that Russian experiment, and they've done it a couple of times. I put some DNA into a vessel, the DNA, and then observe the photons around this DNA, remove the DNA, the photons remain there. They remain there for up to 24 hours, but they can still detect it. They're probably still there afterwards. So wherever we're going, we're attracting photons. We're leaving that image of us. So what's happening to those photons afterwards? If I smile and those photons are replicating me, there's going to be smiles of me everywhere. Anyway, it's
no, but it's little things to kind of, it's funny, as above, so below, as with
as above, so below. Yes, absolutely.
All these fractals of things that we just take for granted or we don't realize, but it's to kind of think about it from that. The butterfly effect is real. It has to be, sound and frequency and why we resonate noise from our mouth. There's beej sounds, chanting,
Om, of
and
course,
you could argue that the consonants would shape the torus that's coming out. That's kind of next level stuff that kind of all makes sense. And
that tattoo there is Tibetan. It's Om. That's Om. Om mani padme Om. Yeah, that tattoo there. Yeah. And on this side, it's Persian, which is, it's saying I'm grateful from the bottom of my heart in Persian. Now, when I'm cycling, what position I'm in this position with my forearms out. The wind from are going across me, and it's to me, in my mind, it's like a Tibetan prayer flag, and where they put them up on the top of the stupas. Yeah. I am sending positive vibrations everywhere I'm cycling, or running, or standing. So
no doubt, that's and I think there's, we can get into some biogeometry, like all that stuff, the sacred geometry, this it's all patterns, and it's all, you could argue math, but I think it's just the universal language, if you will, but it's all patterns. And I think a smile, like we just getting back to that, it's your imprint. It's your little piece of.
What I've noticed over these last few years, especially even more so in the last year, is wherever I go, people actually come up to me and say that they feel so good being in my presence, the vibration, the energy. And fine, we all know that happens. It's lovely if you go and watch somebody speak and it's somebody who's inspiring and you feel good. That happens. Teachers, I've had students that said I was most inspiring teacher. That's great. But now people actually that I don't even know coming across in a room and telling me that. I had a delivery the other day and the guy said, "You just made my day." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Because I just feel so good around you." And I said, "I don't even know. I think it's because they say something like, are you good?" or whatever they express. I said, my life is good. Everything's good. I just have these sort of, and like he said, "Oh, can you give me a lift of this?" I said, "I can help you with anything, apart from if you want to borrow some money." But it's that type of, so, and then since I met Anna, now the two of us go together. People are saying the presence of us both in the same place. I mean, she runs a lot of yoga retreats and breathwork sessions, and so that's her world, that's her business. So people do come across to her classes and do feel good at the end of it. But when the both of us are in there,
well, like when you've got a very expanded aura. I mean, I can feel it from here, Duncan. Like
Thank you.
like it's crazy. So these things are physical. Like, I mean, there's the thing about like the arc line, the arc line around your halo, if you will.
Yes.
That's why the Japanese bow. It's not to pay respect. It's to share their arc line.
I did not know that. That's a really interesting.
So it's an energetic exchange.
Yes.
And a trusting thing that they get to share their energetic field.
That makes sense, doesn't it? That.
Yeah. And it's that kind of stuff. Like you start to think, and someone will say, "No, it's respect. It's their tradition." Well, why would it start? Like when we're shaking hands, what's a handshake? It's actually an energetic exchange.
Of course it is.
I'm allowing you to feel me and be in your presence. And
yes,
it's not a deal.
The Inuits with the nose touch and the sharing of breath, all these cultures that, those make a lot of sense, does that?
Yeah. And so, when you, and I, in my, I don't know, what's her name? Oh my Lord. Sandra, shit. Anyway, she talks about these, not only that your subtle bodies, but your spiritual body, but she talks about it like it's biology. It's not just woo-woo stuff. Like you have an electromagnetic field, you have a bioelectric field, you have an aura, and this is part of your true body. It's not just something that we think is maybe there, but no, because you feel it, like you're mentioning. When you and Anna are together, it's probably just, it's that expansion. So
I mean, it works the other way as well, though, when you can be in the presence of somebody that's got low vibrations and they say, "Oh, I feel so much better meeting you today." And I'm thinking, I feel drained now because I've been in their presence with so I try to avoid myself from that negativity, like I said to you, with the news, and just to even discuss these conversations. And almost somebody's talking about something negative, I just try to I try to be absolutely, and try to find the positive in everything you can. Not always easy, but you will find it.
I love that. I mean, I think a few, there's these cliches, but like I don't know if you ever heard of the 4 agreements. Have you ever heard of those? Don Miguel Ruiz, I think. Anyway, it's pretty simple. They're pretty simple. First is take nothing personally.
Yes.
Or no, the first one is be impeccable with your word.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So that makes complete.
Is take nothing personally.
Yes.
Number 3 is don't make assumptions. And number 4 is always do your best. And those are the 4 agreements that if you can kind of make it, and they're tough, man. They're not easy to take things not personally. It's hard, especially in our line of thinking where we're at. It's really, really hard to not take things personally.
I feel as though I am doing so well at that now. Really, whether it's because I'm hiding behind, I don't know. But we open up social media and I'll get so much abuse. I will get so many messages, people telling me I'm going to die such a painful death, and all these
poor cholesterol.
Yes. Good. And then I fancy taking the time to actually send a message to somebody that they're predicting I'll die of this painful heart attack.
Yeah. So actually, maybe before we wind up, I'd love to talk about that. How much backlash do you actually get? I mean, I get a little bit. I don't really let it bother me at all anymore. I just look at it and go, wow, man, if you're really, really against something and you have the time to type that on your phone or on your computer, bless you, man, because you need to be like, you know what I mean? That's I hope you find your way. That's kind of what I go through. But what about you? Like, do you get lots of it?
Yes, I do. And I'm just thinking, when was the last? And I'm thinking, actually, not for a few weeks, but maybe I have not noticed for the last few weeks. But no, I do go through stages where I get quite a lot. It depends what I've suddenly posted. If I posted something that might be a little bit close to the bone for people, and is talking about their sugar addictions or worse, I can see where maybe it might upset them a little bit, because they've bought into that way of living all their lives. So it's very difficult to go back. And you need to be a strong person to try and say, you know what, I may have it wrong. I'm going to give it a go. It really needs to be strong. And so once upon a time, I might have replied back, and I might have replied back intellectually, but you're never going to win an argument like that, because they'll just get stupid. They'll just come back with quoting something that's, and then it just becomes. So what I actually started doing was replying with my own interpretation of what they were saying, with a positive interpretation of it.
Yeah.
So, oh, thank you for bringing that to my attention. That's very, or even more positive than that. And it's like, and it's quite hard. So it's almost like I'm there subconsciously trying to find something positive in their negativity. But it kills the conversation immediately, because they've got nowhere to go with that.
Well, I have sort of an idea about sort of like, it's because I'm always trying to, I don't know, to think about things and kind of go from a deeper place. And I kind of summed it up to, if you were taught and told something that you know nothing else but that, and I felt something different, that argument can never argument can never be won.
No, it can't be. No, I see what you're saying.
Feeling. We're talking about from our truth, whatever it is, and they're talking from, I was taught and told this. You've got to be wrong, and that's where it kind of like, okay, well, how well is our discussion going to go if that's what you're coming to me with?
Yeah,
and that includes university professors. That includes doctors, and I think and I mean, I feel them, because I mean, if I spent 6 years, 10 years studying something that turned out to be wrong, I'd be pretty pissed too. I'd be a little bit gutted. But is that an excuse for not having an open mind? I don't know. But that's probably for another day.
Yeah, maybe so. I like to think I've always had this open mind, but I don't know. Yeah, it's everybody's different. Everybody's different. And I mean, I know I was in a group once, and it was just getting too much to me, and they were all going on about the way. And I just said, does anybody want to have a race? And just killed again. Just kill the conversation. I said, choose your weapon. Do you want to run, swim, cycle? Yeah. What do you want? When someone bloke said to me, he goes, yeah, I will. I said, now you got to name the distance. What are we doing? Are we doing a mile? We're doing 10 miles, 50 miles, 100 miles. Well, I don't want to go too far. Okay. Well, would you have to eat before you set off, or what would you do? Do you need to take water? Because I don't.
Let this just all the. What do you mean? No, you need water. What do you mean? Where do you want to?
You're a carb burner. You need to take water with you. My muscles don't need water. What? You don't? What are you talking about? I said, well, I know. I'm the one doing it. It's not. It's not make believe, is it?
That is absolutely priceless, because I could just imagine you like, yeah, okay, what, you want to race? Good luck. All right. Well, it's funny how all those sort of things pop in. I mean, it's everybody's sort of in this that's been doing it for a while, that kind of gets themselves, because I think that's what it is. I think it's that you just know you, and your, whatever your opinions or your experiences are, it's you. And I don't think, when there's a difference between people imposing will and saying this is the way, and then there's people showing a different perspective. And I hope people can see that there's other perspectives than the ones we've grown up with. Because
I often say to them, I said, if I am offering something that could potentially change your life for the better within a relatively short period of time, why wouldn't you try it?
yeah,
Why would you? Oh, because I can't. Now we're talking about something different. Now, if you can't do it, no, well, I couldn't have my coffee without sugar. Now we're on to a different topic here.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I can, because you are now confirming your addiction, which I can sympathize because it is an addiction.
yeah,
So you need to break that first. But if it's really difficult for them, you know,
yeah,
you're taking away their drug, and
yeah,
they will grab hold of it. I know that there was a woman at work. She wanted to get into it. She says, "Mr. Smart, I want to get into my swimsuit for the summer. What's your tip to lose weight?" And I said, "I can tell you, but you won't want to do it." "I do. I'll do anything you suggest." I said, "No, I'm really sure you won't." So I said to her, "Just cut out wheat out of your diet." And she goes, "What?" And I can do that. I said, "Will I lose weight?" I said, "Just cut wheat out of your diet. Just start there." And then she goes, "Well, what's wheat in?" I said, "Oh, virtually everything. Everything that you're consuming is in there." She said, "Well, what about my pizza?" "You definitely have your pizza or your pasta or any of that." She goes, "Well, I can't do that." I said, "But you just told me that you could
yeah,
do anything I suggested. And it's a very simple thing.
mm-hmm.
Very simple. Well,
Yeah,
what about my sandwich, my bread? I wouldn't be able to. No, you can't have that. What about my
yeah,
beer? No, you can't have your beer. You know, it's. So I
yeah.
told you wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I just met a friend of a friend, and he sat down, and I don't know how it actually happened. He's like a good looking guy. He's in good shape. And he was telling me, then all of a sudden the conversation went into, I've had horrible IBS for, 10 years and blah, 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 blah. And I looked at him and I was like, well, I can tell you're a gym guy. What do you eat for breakfast? He's like, sure enough, oatmeal, blah, 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 all that. I was like, cut out the oatmeal. And he's
Yeah.
like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, cut it out. He's like, but I need it. I'm like, no, you don't. Just make up your protein with some real protein and cut it out.
Yeah.
He just texted me about 3 days ago saying, for all my life dealing with this crap, I can't believe in 2-minute conversation, you said, like, in 30 days, my gut is so much better. It's like 95% resolved. And I'm like, that's only
Yeah.
my friend. That's one food. Unbelievable.
I have so many stories similar to that. Similar stories when you could almost see it on them. You could. There was a Frenchman, and I quote him in my book as well, that said, "Show me the man, and I'll tell you what he eats."
Yeah.
And he said that in the 1800s because he's actually. I know that I could look at somebody, and you could look at where they're laying the fat deposits.
Yeah.
I know what they're going to be eating. I look at the skin condition, the little white spots at the back of their arms.
Yeah.
I know you eat plenty of wheat with all the pesticides. You can see it in their eyes. I can spot a vegan and a vegetarian from their sunken eyes. You know, it just
and that's there's like in the healing process, you can see that these things resolve almost before weight, almost before fat. Like they get color. All of a sudden, the eyes whiten. Those are great signs. Like the nails start getting strong.
And this, when you say the eyes whiten, it's like life in their eyes. They suddenly get life. You know, I've known plenty of people that almost look as though they're like shark eyes. They're just behind a veil. They're not really there. Whether they're on medication, possibly are on medication, because plenty of people are. And I think I feel sad for them in a way to live their life like that. But actually, they're the one behind the veil. It's hard work to step out sometimes and actually see the world what it is, because it's a sad place sometimes. And we've got to work at it, and we've got to. So if you are taking those, antidepressants or whatever you're taking, it's probably a comfortable place for them to live.
Yeah, and that's where it's hard. Like I had a talk with somebody who said, waking somebody up is the hardest thing, because if they're not ready to, they're not going to see it. There's not much you can do. They're going to have to come into this stuff, hopefully with a question, and then when you get uncomfortable and dig into it, that's when I think the sparks start flying. But if you're just, it's sad, man. I know. I see a lot of people. They think that they're medicated. That's saving their life, and that's.
But then you could go down the whole conspiracy, which is probably not a conspiracy. It's conspire with us. It's with the government that want everybody to be that way.
Yeah.
It's you go off to work, earn your money, pay your taxes, go home, sleep in front of the television, and repeat, and keep buying more carbohydrates because we'll get the VAT, the tax on that as well. And once you step out and you wake up, you think, do you know what? I can eat so much cheaper. I can live so much cheaper. I don't need to be working for the machine anymore.
Well, I'm thinking actually, like maybe that's a good place to sort of to wind up, because I want to have another talk with you and come back and we'll talk about the conspiracy side of things, because
we can talk as much as you want about any topic. It doesn't even matter if nobody's listening to us, Tony. I just enjoy chatting to you, man.
But I where was I going with this? I think that this is something that I've been thinking about, especially right now, watching everything. I only think we've only begun about this kind of descent into everything costing more, especially being in Canada. I know in the UK, it's like talking to Mark in Ireland. It's like, it's all the same. Our prices are going up with everything. They're going to be choking out. I've been fasting consciously, and I've been looking at my cost of food. And when I eat every other day or fast for 2 days, 4 days a week, I drop my food cost, which is nothing compared to the standard diet people eating food. So all this stuff, there's a way. And I think that might be something that might be very valuable to some people if they can understand fasting.
When I met Anna, I was every couple of weeks I would buy an ox heart and I would slow cook it until it was tender. And he would feed me for 3 days. That would cost less than £1. It was 80p. And I'm thinking, so potentially, okay, you wouldn't want to eat that way all the time because it gets pretty, but 80 pence for an ox heart for 3 days. It's like, and you can add a few bits of the meat to it or whatever you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you just started looking like, I mean, I'm a believer in nose to tail. I'm more of a proportionate. I don't think we should be eating liver every day, but I mean, I don't think we should be wasting it either at the same time in proportion to the animal.
I love this point. I just have to mention my mother. She's 80 years of age and she's now a carnivore, is my mum. And she messaged me the other day. She says, I'm catching the bus into town because I'm going to go to my favorite butcher to get some liver. She says, I woke up this morning and wanted some pig's liver. And I said, okay. And I said, you are like the modern day hunter gatherer. She said, well, I'm hardly a hunter if I'm going to the butcher's. I said, well, no, you're still gathering. You're still a modern day hunter. She said, well, I've got my bus pass, because once you get at that age, you get a free bus pass in the UK. She says, so I'm getting the bus to go get my liver. I said, do you do anything else? She goes, no, I'll come straight home and I'll fry it in butter and I'll eat it. And I said, but that is a modern day hunter-gatherer. You're using your weapon is your bus pass. Your method is a bus. You know, it's it's a beautiful story. An 80-year-old woman. And then she says, oh, I'll call into the gym on the way back. Yeah, of course you do, because you're 80 years of age and that's what you do when you're a carnivore. You know,
Love it. That is beautiful. Well, oh man, I love, thanks for coming on.
Quite all right.
Thanks for hanging out. I really, I've been waiting for round 2 for, 6 months since we had our first
and it's, but the thing is, as I said before, we keep aware of what we're doing each other, and just well, I think we'll message you a little bit more. I'll fire a few more messages when ideas come into my mind. And
man, anytime you want to have anytime something new comes out and you want to shout it out, man, I'm down. I'm always up. And these conversations, this new channel that I'm starting, is I want to get deeper. I want to get deeper. Yeah. Just eat meat, sleep, and repeat. It's getting into the little bit of the really what makes people do what they do. And I mean, you're a fantastic example of making things possible. Like, you know, I mean, not everybody has to be a high performance athlete to feel the benefits of changing their life from a nutritional standpoint. But I think, as we touched today, I think a lot of things it's deeper. And
much deeper.
I appreciate you, man. I love you. And this has been so much fun.
Thank you very much.
So where just before we sign off, where do people find you? Anything you want to let them know? Just search Duncan Smart. I'm out there. It's a pretty distinctive name, especially when you attach carnivore to the back of it. But I try to put myself onto social media, and
And if you just happen to look on any of the bookstores online, that you'll see the books as well. You might be interested in some of the metaphysical books that I've produced as well. But
oh, I'm into those. Next time we talk, I'll have read some of those ones for sure, because I like the deeper stuff. That kind of, I'm not to say that the carnivore diet is not deep, but
that the carnivore has been our gateway into all the deeper stuff. It's a doorway. It's opened up. It's helped us see everything else.
Well, my friend, thank you so much. We will do this again.
Please.
Soon. All right, guys. Thanks, Duncan, and just hang out for 1 second, bro. And
of course I will.
Thank you, guys, and we'll talk to you soon.